if you're on the line, I just want to ask you to please mute your. Thank you. I'd like to bring the governing school board meeting for the Cartwright Elementary School District to order. Please let the record reflect that it is 6:07. And if you'll please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
And that was the Raul Castro Academy of Fine Arts.
The Raul Castro. Thank you for the Raul Castro Academy of Fine Arts for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Just want to make a quick announcement that just for everyone's safety, we respectfully ask that no one approach the dais during the meeting, during a recess, or after the meeting adjourns. This includes walking past the podium. Thank you. The Cartwright School District is located on the ancestral homelands of the Hohokam, Akimil, Odom, and Odom Jude people, ancestors of the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community, or otherwise known as SRPMIC. We acknowledge the rich oral history, culture of these communities, and their ancestral ties to the land. I'd like to move that we adopt the agenda as presented. Do I have a second?
Second, Madam President.
Thank you, Ms. Hernandez, for the second. And I will proceed to a roll call vote. Ms. Cantu, how do you vote?
I vote aye, Madam President.
Thank you. And Ms. Hernandez, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you. And Ms. Garcia, how do you vote? Ms. Garcia, we're voting on the adoption of the agenda. How do you vote? Just want to make sure that
I
she's
passed.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Pass?
Yes.
And I vote aye.
Spin.
And motion passes. Ms. Garcia, you stated a pass. That means we go back around to you?
Oh. No, I abstain.
Oh, okay. Ms. Garcia's abstaining? Thank you. And it's time for our public hearing. We have a public hearing regarding discussion on the boundary attendance area change. This has to do with the Manuelito Peña Junior Elementary School and G. Frank Davidson Elementary School boundaries. Mr. Watson?
Yeah, Madam President, we have Casey Newman and Mike Clark who are going to just talk a little bit about the boundaries. We presented this information at the last board meeting officially and had it unofficially at a previous board meeting before that. And we are having this public hearing so that we can make a boundary adjustment to help relieve some of the, to help our families go to school maybe a little bit closer to their home and also help relieve some of the some of the population stresses on some of our campuses. And so we've got Mr. Newman and Mr. Clark here.
All right. Good evening, President Hernandez, governing board members, Mr. Watson, and executive team. I am Casey Newman, principal at Pena Elementary, and you just summarized it, so we can go home early now. So I know Mr. Watson, the last few meetings has pretty much laid out everything, but I know there was a few questions of how these boundaries ever came about. Ms. Hernandez being new to the board. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history, kind of the life we're living in reality now with our enrollment, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Clark, and he'll let you know kind of how, if it does go through, how they're going to welcome these new students and families over at Davidson. So Davidson opened in 1998. Pena opened in 2003. Our current reality today, Pena's at 807 students, third biggest school in the district. 138 of those students come from those 3 apartments that we're looking at rezoning. And Davidson is sitting at 554 students at this day. And 68 of those students actually are living in those 3 apartments and walk to Davidson. So let's say this took place last year. Pena's enrollment today would have been 669. Davidson would have been 692. But I don't know if you've been out by Pena lately, because when it did open in 2003, there were only 2 apartment complexes in that square mile, the Cove and the Rise at Estrella. And only about 200 students came from those. But at that time in 2003, we had 890-something students. June, we have an apartment complex opening of 190 apartments right behind Castro there next to the Cove. We have 150 housing, single unit housing on 79th and McDowell that are already starting to build, and we had our first family enroll before spring break. And right next to that, you have an 80 townhouse complex. The ground's cleared, and it should be done by December. So as our numbers go down, if this is approved, we're anticipating in the next 2 years to actually be back close to 800. And you even were wondering about how they went about these 3 apartment complexes. Why would they bus them over to Pena? Again, in 2003, there was no real housing unit there. You guys remember, and Ms. Cantu and Ms. Hernandez, the good old days. If they did not do that in 2003, Davidson would have been sitting at close to 1,250 students, and Pena would have been about 550. So that kind of balanced it out. Being a PE teacher early in the 2000s, I would go to Davidson for meetings, and their PE teachers would be in a closet because there was no rooms available. So it's to alleviate the growth that they had there. Changing dynamics, we know all the growth going on at Pena. This is just, as Mr. Watson said, to not only support our community, to support Davidson's community, and also thinking about transportation. We have 3 buses that actually go to those 3 apartments to pick it up. And I'll answer any questions after Mr. Clark is done. Former Principal of the Year, Mr. Clark, over at Davidson.
Good evening, Superintendent Watson, President Hernandez, members of the governing board, executive team, and those in attendance and watching. I believe Mr. Newman was the first or one of the first principals of the year, so don't let him walk away too humble. Change is definitely scary for parents and families, and especially when it's your children. So I think the first thing, I just wanted to take a moment and highlight what makes me proud to be the principal at G. Frank Davidson. Again, I'm Mike Clark, principal at G. Frank Davidson. And at Davidson, we're proud to provide a safe and supportive learning environment for our students through kindergarten through 6th grade. And then our goal is simple but powerful, just to help all of our students grow and achieve and move confidently towards their hopes and dreams. We believe every scholar deserves the knowledge and skills and opportunities they need to succeed. And our motto says it best: learn, achieve, and succeed. Every day we work to ensure our scholars can read, write, and speak at or above grade level standards, and building a strong academic foundation. Inside the classroom, like many of our amazing campuses, we have one-on-one Chromebook, systematic reading instruction, research-based math strategies, a cohesive writing program, and then we have music, art, PE, STEM, and then we also have something that I'm most proud of as a principal. We have, in the 3 years that I've been there, a 90% staff retention rate, both certified and classified staff. So it just builds that community and that commitment towards the success of our scholars. And learning doesn't stop when the school day ends. As a K-6 school, I used to be a principal at a middle school, and what I really appreciated were the after-school opportunities that students have. So we've worked to really build opportunities for our students. We have esports, a soccer club, garden club, STEM club, dance club, student council, a community service club, as well as field trips and reading and math tutoring. One of the things that makes Davidson most special is our welcoming school community. From the moment you walk into our front office, you'll be greeted by our friendly office staff, caring teachers, and supportive peers. We work hard to ensure every student and family feels valued and supported by the Davidson community. And we also believe in celebrating our students' success. Throughout the year, we recognize and celebrate not only academics, but attendance, positive behavior, and growth and overall achievement. And we encourage our families who have questions or concerns or just want to learn more about Davidson to either call and we can schedule a tour at any point from now until the end of the year. I don't mind doing that, whatever works for our parents and families who want to come and see even, and I would recommend that during the school day if possible, because then you see what life is like during the school day, but at any point, whether it's during or after school. And then additionally, if everything does move forward, what I hope to do in late April or early May is hold an informational night for our parents and families who are possibly joining Davidson, where they can come meet myself and any other staff who can answer questions about Davidson and what makes it a great place to be. And with that, like I said, the biggest thing is we are an open door. If parents have questions, if you all have questions, we definitely will take those questions, and we would be glad to have you visit our campus at any time. And with nothing else, I'll turn it over to questions for you guys.
One more thing. So this would be just the exact reversal of what happened in 2003, because up until 2003, those 3 apartments walked to Davidson, and then knowing the amount of students, they changed the boundaries, that little island there, and then they provided transportation. This is just a total reverse, and we wouldn't be providing transportation. And those students who have been at Pena, you're more than welcome to stay at Pena until you get through 6th grade. There just wouldn't be transportation with this boundary change is what the district is proposing.
Sorry, thank you. Are there any questions? If there aren't any, I knew it was important as to why it had happened. Just for the life of me, I just couldn't find that detail. But thank you so much for that presentation, and thank you for offering, for the parents to come meet the staff, those who are new to the school. Thank you so much.
Madam President, I do have
Okay,
a
Ms.
question.
Cantu.
Mr. Principals of the Year, right?
Oh yeah, good. Yeah.
I was here when that happened. I remember perfectly, and we needed to balance out the amount of students on both schools. And what is your feeling about balance out the amount of students on both schools? Because obviously, just one question for clarification: how many assistant principals you have, Mr. Newman?
I just have one assistant principal.
One assistant principal.
Yes.
And 800 students.
And last year we were at 838 at one point. And even right now with the 9 apartment complexes we have, when I last did it, I think in October, December, there was probably about 30% open apartments in there. So I could have 25 kids show up in the next month too. So we are a very transient school since COVID over at Pena. And our staff does amazing. I can tell you this week already, 40 days left of school, we got 4 new students. You walk them into our teacher's classroom and they act like it's the first day of school and welcome them. And they're stressed out. It's the last week. We got testing coming up for 3rd through 6th graders, but you would never see it on our teachers' faces. And I anticipate, I even emailed the executive team, like up until in May, I promise you, I will have new students walking into our classrooms in May.
I'm glad that we are trying to make things balance out here. And Mr. Clark, right? Mr. Clark, I'm sorry, you're going to get some more students than you already have, but everything is in the benefit of transportation, class size, and personnel. And with that in place, I think it will benefit the students big time because there's more room for them, correct? More opportunity to continue learning. So just for our constituents, for our community to have an idea why these changes are happening. And obviously, we don't want Mr. Newman to have the double amount of students in the other schools. We want them all to be level so everybody is treated fair. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you. It's a great issue to have during these times. Thank you. And with that, because it is a hearing, we do have a call to the public. And I believe I have one that's a different in the color, right? So I have changes from Peña to Davidson Transportation. So we do have, is it Anaeli Rodriguez Ramirez?
Hi, thank you. My name is Anael Rodriguez Ramirez, and good evening. I'm here because my concerns are that my daughters, if I'm a single mom, and I work, and the schedule would affect me because they would have to walk, and it's, my concern is, where I live, it's very dangerous. The street and 71st and Indian School, and just for them to walk by themselves, there's a lot of bad people, and I wanted just to tell you guys that I was a victim of assault when I used to ride the bus. I was in seventh grade in Desert Sands. I was getting off the bus by Rolero, and I knew one of the girls. Luckily, they didn't kill me, but till this day, it affected me a lot. Just to feel that knife, to my stomach. Luckily, they didn't do anything to me. I was able to run and ask for help. And when my mom got there, she was there. She hugged me. They got arrested. They took all my jewelry. And I just don't want my kids to ever go through something like that, that I went through. And those are my concerns. And I'm the only parent that came here because other parents, they're afraid to speak up because they don't know, how to speak English. And with everything that's going on with immigration, they're afraid. But I'm here, to, give my voice for all the parents. And I would please, if you guys can just please, just leave the transportation, please. My kids love Peña, and it would affect them too because, like me, when I was a child, we would always, my parents, they would have to move us due to work wise or transportation, and honestly, it affected me as a child because you get used to being in one school and just having to go to a different school, it affects, it affected me as a child, but, it would, if you guys can please just leave, transportation, it would help a lot. And, yeah, that's it. And thank you for your time. And
Ms. Ramirez, thank you for having the courage to come and speak to us. We during call to the public, we may not engage or ask, I mean, get into a conversation about it. However, what we could do is, I don't have your phone number, but we do have some information. But if you could provide your phone number and leave it with our assistant, so that we can make sure that we follow up and we have staff, talk to you, possibly just have a conversation with you and try to work something. Okay, whatever the possibilities are.
yeah, and like
Thank
the other parents, from where we live at the square, they don't have cars, and especially too, the transportation, it helps us a lot, and especially like I said, me as a single mother, that I work, it helps me a lot for them. That I know that they go on the bus in the morning, they get to school safe, and after school as well too. And I just, for me, it would be really concerning for them to walk to Davidson. Me as an adult, honestly, like I don't even like to walk through that area. even my older sister, we used to live in San Marina. She got run over right on 71st Avenue. So a lot of bad experiences, and if you guys can please work with us, with the community, and not, at least my kids, one is in 4th and 5th grade, at least for them just to finish, those years, at Peña. Peña's like, I know Davidson's a good school too, but just Peña's like amazing school, and they're sad, they don't want to have to move to a different school. But I would leave my number too if
All righty. Well, thank you so much.
thank you so
for
much
being
for your
here.
time.
Okay.
Thank you.
If our assistant is over here, you could stop by there. Thank you. And I don't have any other calls to the public for the public portion or the public hearing portion. So I will be moving on to the next item. So we are adjourning the public hearing portion, and please let the record reflect that it is 6:27. Let me just get my items here in a row. Did you skip this one? Okay. And I'm sorry, Mr. Rodriguez, I do have an item before moving forward. I do have a Cartwright School District video announcement. At the last? Okay. Just making sure if it's not. That I don't skip anything, okay? I'm sorry, I've got a couple of different documents here, and I want to make sure I'm looking at the correct one. Okay, I'm moving on to the consent agenda. So, I'm sorry, I thought it was the public hearing portion that we just did. So we've got the other, the general call to the public. Thank you, Christine. Moving to that, I do have some items for the governing board meeting. I've got Miss Cecilia Moreno Encinas budget questions.
Good evening. I am Cecilia Moreno, taxpayer, district resident, and concerned citizen. Once again, what is your agenda? I went through the agendas for the last year and nowhere did I find where you requested funding to pay for consultant fees. I asked last month, didn't get a response from anyone. The individuals you are paying are former Superintendent Jacob Chavez and Zeke O'Hare. Why and what information would Steve Watson need from two former employers at the cost of $10,000 a month? Is there some secret agenda? Rosa, this is a questionable expense. You always question. This is one you should question.
Ms. Moreno, I'm going to ask you to please refrain from addressing the board members specifically by their name. You're here to ask your questions in general, but I won't allow.
But
for
I
any
never get an
specific,
answer.
I will not allow for any specific directives to any direct board member.
Anyone, can you answer this question? If you do not need to ask why, and why are you doing the report back to this group? Somebody answer the question and report back to this group why the expense of $10,000 a month to a consulting fee for an acting superintendent. Also, I continue to question what was the cost of terminating Ms. Grijalva's contract. I hear no mention of cost. I remind everyone that the board continues to pay out salaries for Mrs. Haudeke and Mrs. Farrar, two administrators put on leave without due process. Due process is important in this democracy. I don't know that we have one here. It is my understanding that you will move to terminate Mrs. Farrar today. And I ask at what cost to the district. The district also continues to pay a salary to Mr. Watson, whose job was never posted and he was never vetted by the administrator, staff, or the community. And now the district will incur an additional $6 million to move to a 5-day week, a decision not supported by teachers and parents. I also have questions about out-of-state travel expense by administrators and what, if any, is their accountability to report back. One trip by board members to Florida, who will attend, and what is their accountability once they do attend. Also, at the last agenda, there was reference to liquidated damages for breach of employment, which I understand is dealing with teachers. But I failed to see anything having to do with contract termination of 3 administrators placed on leave without due process. Due process would have allowed them as professionals to resign, but you have chosen to ruin their careers instead. Therefore, I will continue to question your actions. The fact that we have an illegally appointed, not vetted superintendent who was allegedly accused of fraud in his prior position in an article of the Arizona Republic.
Your time is up, Ms. Moreno. It's 3 minutes that you were allowed it. Thank you. Thank you for your comments and being here.
Oh my gosh.
3-minute time limit, just the same
It
as
was a
everyone
quote by
else.
the Arizona
Ms.
Republic.
Moreno, it is, Ms. Moreno,
public
your time is
knowledge.
ended. Please step away from the podium. Time is ended.
He wasn't vetted,
One,
and he was accused
your
of fraud.
time is up, Ms. Moreno. Thank you. During call to the public, the board will consider and take possible and not discuss, but there be consideration and possible discussion of comments and complaints from the public will be listened to. The governing board will not take any legal action or on matters raised during the portion of the meeting unless comments and complaints pertain to items included on the agenda. And a 3-minute time limit is set, and all are asked to adhere to this limit. The governing board may direct staff and study matters raised by the public or to reschedule those matters for future consideration, discussion, and or possible action. Just wanted to reiterate that moving forward, since we're going from the public hearing to the other call to the public, I failed to mention that. Although we're not able to engage in a conversation regarding any questions raised, but I do want to clarify with the statements that were made. Due process has certainly been allowed, and there's no such thing going on as an illegal action regarding the superintendent. Moving forward on to the consent agenda, Ms. Cantu. Oh, we have one more or two. I have Ms. Laurie Richards regarding the calendar.
Good evening, governing board members, President Hernandez, Acting Superintendent Mr. Watson, distinguished guests. I'm here to speak about the proposed calendar and to respectfully urge you to reconsider the shift to weekly early release days. This proposal overlooks the clear input already provided by both staff and families who expressed concern about returning to 5-day schedules and the impact of the frequent early dismissals. Research and experience tells us that placing early release days, especially on Fridays, can increase both student and staff absences. It unintentionally creates a pattern where attendance declines, which directly affects student learning. Beyond attendance, early release days are simply not as instructionally effective. A shortened day leads to fragmented lessons and reduced continuity. Compared to the depth and the consistency of a regular full instructional day. This change also creates real challenges for families. Many parents depend on full school days to remain in their work. Frequent early pickups can mean lost wages or added stress. In contrast, having 2 planned full release days each month allows families to prepare students to support their learning, and it allows complete days of learning. And it gives staff meaningful, uninterrupted time for professional development and collaboration. Ultimately, this is about honoring our community, honoring parents by respecting their time and responsibilities, honoring students by protecting consistent, high quality instruction, and honoring staff by giving them the time they need to grow and effectively implement what they learn. On the early release days, staff have rushed professional developments with little time to work together to collaborate to implement those strategies. On full release days, we would be allowed to work in professional development teams and then take what we're learning in the professional development and work with our teams and departments to figure out how we can implement that in our real-time instruction. Giving us the time we need to grow and effectively implement what we learn in professional development is desperately needed. We need the time to discuss, collaborate, and implement these items. And early release days simply do not apply that time to our schedules. At this point, many feel their voices have not been heard. Until we truly collaborate with staff and families, we risk falling short of what our students and community both expect and deserve. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. And I also have Melissa Curry regarding an IEP.
Dear members of the Cartwright School District Governing Board, I'm here to raise serious concerns regarding the failure to implement my son's individualized educational plan and potential violations of the Individuals with Disability Education Act and my son's right to a free and appropriate public education. My son is a student who qualifies for special services, and his IEP clearly outlines the services, supports, and service minutes required for him to access his education. However, these services were not being implemented as required. Because of this failure, my son has began receiving behavior referrals for behaviors that should have been anticipated and addressed through the supports and interventions outlined in his IEP. Rather than ensuring his IEP services were properly implemented, my son was moved from a Class C placement into a general class placement without the services and supports mandated in his IEP. Without the services, he was placed in an environment where he was expected to function without the assistance that the IEP team had already determined was necessary for him to be successful. And in fact, he was placed in situations where he's expected to manage without the supports he is legally entitled to receive. This is extremely concerning that it took outside interventions for Mr. Ruiz contacting the school before my son's service minutes began to be implemented. This indicates the failure to ensure compliance with his IEP under IDEA. Schools are legally required to implement the services and supports outlined in a student's IEP. Failure to do so may constitute a denial of FAPE. This is also not the first time that I've experienced these issues with Cartwright School District. In the past, I had to escalate serious concern regarding the failure to implement my son's IEP at the district's failure to adequately educate him directly to the superintendent at the time, Dr. Chavez. Due to those concerns and the district's inability to meet his needs at that time, my son was transferred out of Cartwright and placed into a public placement at the district's expense. During his time in the public placement, my son made significant and meaningful progress, both academically and behaviorally. Because of that progress, the team believed that he would transition successfully back to Cartwright School District. I was reassured that it would be a positive and supportive transition back into the public school system and that his needs would be properly addressed. I don't have enough time. Unfortunately, I'm now facing the same issues again. Once again, the district is failing to implement the supports that my son requires and is legally entitled to. The lack of implementation of his IEP has placed him in an environment where he's struggling unnecessarily and is being disciplined for behaviors that should have been addressed through proper support and interventions. I also cannot ignore the growing concern that the district may simply be waiting for my son to finish 8th grade, so the responsibility for providing services will no longer fall on Cartwright School District. However, I want to be very clear that I will continue to advocate for my son and for the students whose families may not yet understand their rights under the law. Again, today I had a call that my son again received a referral for behaviors that should have been anticipated. I understand that my son is a hard child or a hard student, but he's a special student. And our special students are the ones that are getting left behind. Sorry.
It's okay. Melissa, thank you. Look, I want to thank you for again for having the courage and coming to address this.
I was so scared too.
The board. You're just having a conversation and you're sharing your experience with the board, and I thank you for that. I want to, as you know, we're not able to respond or engage, but neighbor, we're gonna follow up with you. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Going on to the consent agenda. I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented. Ms. Cantu, do I have a second? Or anybody?
Second, Madam President.
Thank you. I will proceed to for a roll call vote. Ms. Cantu, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you. Ms. Hernandez, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you. And Ms. Garcia, how do you vote?
I vote nay.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Garcia. And I vote aye. Motion carries. We are going on to action items. We have the approval of the proposed attendance area boundary changes for the Manuelito Peña School and Frank G. Davidson Elementary School boundaries to begin the 26-27 school year. Mr. Watson.
Yeah, Madam President, we heard from our two previous principals of the year regarding that. And we also, I think, heard, some compelling, a compelling experience from our call to the public. And we have been having, my recommendation would be to the governing board, would still be to move forward with the boundary changes. That being said, we have had some conversations here in the district office about how to help facilitate our students who are already there, who have chosen to attend there, or for example, if we have some students who are fifth graders this year and want to finish out that sixth grade year. So we are, coming up with various ideas so that we can help that transition be a little bit smoother for some people who might want to continue next year. And be able to provide some transportation, like I said, as a kind of a phased-in opportunity. And so we are cognizant of some of those challenges and trying to help accommodate the bulk of people to make that transition, and for a few who might want to continue with the current situation or with the current attendance, come up with a solution that helps facilitate that. So those are things we have absolutely anticipated, and we have some ideas in the works.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Thank you, Mr. Watson. I move to approve the attendance area boundary changes as presented for Manuelito Peña Elementary and Frank G. Davidson Elementary School boundaries to begin the 26-27 school year. Ms. Cantu, do I have a second?
I second, Madam President.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. And I'll proceed to a roll call vote. Ms. Cantu, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you. Ms. Hernandez, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
And Ms. Garcia, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. And I vote aye. And motion carries. I've got consideration and possible approval of the Cartwright School District number 83, 26, 27 calendar, Mr. Watson.
Yeah, Madam President, Governing Board. We have presented a calendar. We have a calendar for your consideration. This is a 5-day-a-week calendar with an early release, as was mentioned, on Friday for professional development for our teachers and staff. So this is a kind of a classic calendar, similar to calendars of other districts throughout Maricopa County and the state. This calendar also notably allows us to provide breakfast and lunch to students every day of the week during the academic school year. And we do have an opportunity for professional development for 2 hours on Fridays. And this also allows teachers in time in afternoons for professional and personal time as well. Notably, as we are transitioning to a 5-day school week, we want to make sure that our teachers, our staff, our parents perhaps have some time in the afternoon to be able to take care of some of those personal things that they've traditionally done on those Fridays. And so this is the calendar that we've brought to the board.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Watson. I move to approve the Cartwright School District number 83.
I have a couple of questions for discussion.
I was moving forward to the
We're
vote,
still in
but go ahead,
discussion, right?
Go ahead, Miss Garcia. You have a question.
Yeah, well, we haven't had discussion, so I appreciate the time. Thank you. So with that being said, well, number one, Mr. Watson, I believe the last board meeting, you had stated that we would be able to discuss this as a board, but I was never invited to that discussion, so this is new to me too. But I do have a few questions. Will all employees work this schedule? Number one, will they?
I'm sorry, Ms. Garcia, can you restate your question?
Yes, absolutely. I'm asking, will all employees work this schedule? I'm hearing that some related services staff will still work a 4-day schedule. Can you please clarify?
Yeah, Madam President, Ms. Garcia, Governing Board, it is our full-time employees are expected to work full-time, the complete number of hours that is in their contract. And so I do, employees will be able to work the requisite number of hours in their contract. We do have some part-time employees that have different schedules, and their contracted hours would reflect that.
Okay.
Okay, will the work calendars be brought to the board?
Yeah, Madam President, Governing Board, Member Garcia, this is kind of the key calendar for us to approve or not approve, but hopefully to approve this evening so that we can bring, there are a series of calendars, you are right. So we have a variety of work calendars depending on what your what your classification is in the district and what your responsibilities are. And so, yes, those additional calendars would be brought to the Governing Board for approval.
Okay, well, and finally, this is all very concerning because it's very confusing, and that is the key right there. So what is the most concerning to me and to others is that we're going back 180 days. However, this calendar includes less instructional time than the one presented last month. It's extremely confusing with the direction of the board and current admin. Why would we, as a district, spend $5.5 million to only add approximately 66 instructional hours to the calendar? Mr. Watson had said our goal is to improve student achievement. However, I'm not sure how 66 hours is going to have that large of an impact. Why not just keep the 4-day and extend the year? That will help save money, keep families happy, and get more instructional time.
Yeah, so Madam President, Board Member Garcia, Governing Board, so I've heard various numbers thrown out about how much it's going to cost to return to the 5-day. I think I've said from the very beginning it's going to cost anywhere from maybe $2 to $5 million. And so there is some uncertainty there. I'm aware of that. And we're working on, we've got some various budget contingencies for that, and we feel confident moving forward. Regarding the number of minutes, this increases the number of minutes from our 4-day a week schedule. This puts us more in line with the other districts throughout the county. This is a calendar that a very similar calendar to other school districts, and so that does get us more minutes in the classroom, and I think accomplishes some of those goals.
Thank you.
So I guess my final question is, I know that the board, the majority of the board, has decided to overlook other decisions. For example, I know we're not talking about the 4 versus 5 day anymore because you've already decided, in spite of what the community, parents, and employees wanted, you went the opposite direction, even though you gave them, you allowed them to think that they had a voice. And now with the calendar, so my question is, are they being surveyed? Are we listening to the employees and to the families? Or are you once again just making decisions based on your own agendas and not listening to them again?
Ms.
Can you
Cantu,
please answer
Ms.
that
Garcia.
question? Were there surveys?
Ms. Garcia,
Were there surveys?
thank you for your question. I don't know
We're,
whether that
we're
is just for
we're still in
clarification.
discussion.
I'm
We're
trying
still
to
in
clarify
discussion,
your
Lydia.
question so that I understand it correctly,
Okay.
so that we're able to respond to
Okay.
it. I just want to make sure, want to clarify whether that's a question or an allegation, because you simply have already stated your
It's a
opinion and
question.
position. So the question being, again, is, are the employees going to be listened to? Is that your question?
Yeah. No, my question is, has there been a survey for the families, for the parents, for the community, for the stakeholders, for the employees? Have they had a voice regarding this calendar? Because it just changed from last month. So again, what I'm saying, and why I said that is because because I'm part of the board and I have to be accountable as well, are making decisions that are not in their best interest. We're not listening to them. We're allowing them to speak, but we're not listening to them. So again, was there a survey regarding this calendar? Finding out what they
Mr.
want.
Watson?
Yeah, Madam President, Board Member Garcia, Governing Board, there was not a specific survey regarding this specific calendar.
There were no surveys, because I asked this question before about a previous surveys as well. So how is it that we are going to be of service to them if we're not listening to them or even asking what they want?
Ms. Garcia, I think we had a conversation last week about the conversations that have taken place. It wasn't just a decision to develop the calendar. It's needed. It's badly needed, and also moving forward, the fact that we are changing our calendar, therefore our bell schedule. There's a lot of work that goes into it. It wasn't just pulled out from some shelf here. There's been a lot of conversations that have been taking place. Is there something on that calendar that you wanted to highlight, that you're not happy with, or that you've heard? What specifically on that calendar?
I just gave a brief synopsis of the concerns. And not only that, but you just mentioned you've been discussing this since last week. But I have never been a part of those discussions. As a board member, I have been completely excluded. And it makes me understand how the employees and the parents feel completely excluded. We work for them. And I want to be clear about that. We are to be of service to them, not to ourselves.
Exactly.
And so I find it offensive.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia.
Okay.
And so I had already stated the motion. So allowing for Ms. Garcia to have partake in discussion. Ms. Cantu, do I have a second?
I second, Madam President.
Thank you, and I will proceed with the roll call vote. Ms. Cantu, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. Ms. Hernandez, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you, Ms. Hernandez. Ms. Garcia, how do you vote?
Before I cast my vote, I would like to request that this matter be tabled. I know that you already seconded it, but you also know how
Your
all the
vote?
employees feel about it and families. Yes, I'm getting there, Lydia. Hold on. And so, with that being said, with the lack of transparency and communication, I vote no.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Thank you for your hearing. We had a training last meeting. Thank you so much. And I vote aye, and motion carries. And moving forward, we've got the approval of the 26-27 Pay for Performance Award Plan. And this is based on data from the 25-26 school year. Dr. Etheridge.
Right to the right. To the left. There you go. Oh, that's his calendar. There you go. No, next, sorry. The one that you just were hovering over. There you go. Perfect. All right, Madam President, Governing Board members, Superintendent Watson, executive team, and all those in the audience. This is the Pay for Performance Award Plan proposal for 26-27. As we know, it is based off of data from this current school year. So we're adopting the performance plan that will be paid out really starting in June and then going into next year, but based on data that we're currently in right now. So the first piece is performance pay based off of the assessment. And this, when we talk about assessment, we are talking about the AASA assessment. So the one that students are beginning to take and will be starting to take over the next couple of weeks. This is no change from the current pay for performance plan that we have. It's anticipated to be $1,500 maximum award to be paid in December of 2026. For this assessment piece, the performance pay kind of goes in a certain order. The first one is district criteria. And so if the 14 of the 20 schools receive a letter grade of C or better, then 100% of the teachers receive their performance pay. If that does not happen, then we take a look at the schools. And so if the individual school receives a letter grade of a C or better, the teachers at that school site would receive 100% of their performance pay. And if that doesn't happen, then we go to kind of the individual subcomponent criteria to where we start examining like FastBridge data, we start examining mimic data, those types of things, attendance criteria to determine the certain percentage of eligible performance pay that the teacher at that school would receive. Okay, so this past year, in the current performance pay in December, we did pay out to all teachers the $1,500 because last year we had 14 out of 20 schools or better have a C or better. Taking a look at the next component of performance pay, this is performance pay evaluation. And this amount is proposed to increase from last year. So last year we did $600. This amount is proposed to increase to $1,500. And at the end of this presentation, we'll go over the budget as to how we're able to do that. But the idea for this component of the performance pay is based on the teacher evaluation. So the teacher evaluations coming this spring, some probably have already had theirs, but over the next couple months, based on those results, highly effective or effective teachers would receive 100% of that performance pay. Teachers evaluated as developing would receive 50% of that performance pay, and anybody below developing would not receive any performance pay for this component. Again, this is a payment that would be made in June 2026 after we have the teacher evaluation data from the spring. Just a couple notes about eligibility for performance pay. It is applicable to all those on the teacher salary schedule and speech language pathologists. In order to qualify for performance pay, you have to have been employed on or before January 5th in order to have worked at least one semester to earn that performance pay. If they, employees who have met that criteria, but they resign prior to June, they are still eligible for that performance pay. So as long as they finish their contract, they're still eligible for that performance payment in December of the following year. Okay. Employees who are retired and return to work, who are part of ESI, for the 25-26 school year, they're paid at a rate of 90%, similar to our retired return to work salaries. Traveling teachers, because they have multiple school locations, they would receive payment based on whichever school scored the highest if the district criteria was not met. A few more pieces. Again, similarly, self-contained special education classrooms that are outside the area. So vision, hearing, alternate ed, TOSAs, those types of things who may have multiple school sites, again, would be paid based on what the highest school that they're at achieves. Again, of course, teachers, in order to earn the performance pay evaluation, have to have an evaluation in 25-26 in order to qualify for that. And then finally, that amount of performance pay is based on the FTE. So we do have a few part-time teachers, half-time teachers that would receive half of the performance pay based on their FTE. Okay, so that part is the performance pay component of it. The next piece of the plan is professional development. And so we do compensate teachers for outside work that they do to develop professionally. The first one is qualifying certificates and or endorsements. So if teachers have an additional endorsement or certification on their Arizona State certification that they're not currently using in their job, they would receive some compensation for that. And it would be $550 for one endorsement or certificate, and $1,100 for 2 certificates and endorsements. This one is paid, it needs to be kind of turned in, submitted by November of next year, and then that would be paid in December of 2026 as well. A breakdown, a second national board cert also would qualify for that $1,100. So again, $550 for one, $1,100 for 2, or a second national board cert. There are a couple exclusions to this. For example, an SEI endorsement, which Cartwright requires of all teachers to have, that doesn't qualify for the extra payment. Other certificates and endorsements that are excluded, ROTC, we don't have any of those programs here, but those are, driver's ed, adult ed certificates. Those things are excluded from the payment. It wouldn't count towards this performance piece. The second piece of professional development, if I don't have a certificate or an additional certificate or endorsement, the second piece to that is qualifying clock hours. So I can attend classes that are paid by myself, whether that's going to a college or university, whether that's outside professional development. If I pay for that and attend that on my own time, I can utilize those hours to get, again, up to $1,100. 15 clock hours would qualify you for $550. 30 clock hours would qualify you for the $1,100. It is important to note that that $1,100 for the professional development is maximum. So for example, if I have a qualifying certificate and endorsement that I get the $550 for, the highest I can earn for clock hours would be $550. Together, I can't earn more than $1,100 between qualifying certificates and endorsements and clock hours. This runs, basically clock hours can be gathered from November 1st of 2025, this past November, through October 31st of 2026 of next year. And then this payment would be made in April of 2027. And this just goes over, don't need to kind of go over, and I broke the first rule of PowerPoints and all the words on the slide, but I did want to make sure it was listed out for everybody to see. Again, some of these things where it comes to clock hours earned before, if you resign prior to certain dates, you do not receive those payments for clock hours or endorsements. So that's different, remember, than performance pay. The performance pay, I worked all year, finished my contract. We just don't get the results of that until the following year, which is why we have to wait for that payment. But clock hours or endorsements, you have to be employed still in order to receive that funding. Another quick note on this is there is some online trainings that teachers can take. EdWeb is a very popular one. We did make it a little bit, in the past, it was, I want to say easy. Some of them were quality, but you could kind of turn it on in the background and let it play and get that hour, where that's not going to be helpful to the teachers to really develop professionally. So we did put a little bit more, and I think actually EdWeb themselves changed this based on feedback, but they do require an assessment at the end, some work to be done in order to earn that additional hour. So we did put that additional requirement on the professional development pieces. And this just is a table that kind of shows you the things that do qualify for the clock hour payment and the things that don't. So again, if the district pays for that professional development, they don't qualify for the clock hour payment because we already paid for that for you. But if it's your own pay and your own time, we do compensate you for that through this performance pay plan. Okay, and again, we kind of already talked about this. This is similar to before. If you are a half-time teacher, you are eligible for half the payment. If you are retired, return to work, you're eligible for 90% of that payment. A couple questions come up regarding like FMLA. If I'm on FMLA, I am still eligible for that payment if I meet the criteria. If I'm on just an unpaid leave of absence, though, I'm not eligible for that. Another component of the plan is national board certification. So if you receive your national board certification, you can receive a maximum of $3,000. That's paid out in two payments, $1,500 in December 26, $1,500 in May of 2027. This is, again, applicable only to those on the teacher salary schedule. And again, all the words here, basically to sum up, similar to what we've already talked about, paid based off FTE, retired return to work's 90%. You have to be employed through a certain date in order to receive these payments. And then because it's two payments, you have to show proof by certain dates in order to receive full amount or half amount. So that's what all of those pieces talk about. Another component of the performance pay plan is the instructional improvement component. This is for, again, teachers on the teacher salary schedule and speech language pathologist. This is a one-time payment of $400 to really just provide to teachers as an additional amount to help them with instructional improvement. So whether they want to use this for, we have money for supplies in the classroom, but sometimes there's something I want a fuzzy mouse pad or pink keyboard or whatever it is, those kind of things. This kind of money helps for them for some of those purposes. Again, just similar eligibility from before. Retired return to work, 90% based on FTE, have to be employed through a certain date in order to be eligible for that payment. So this is a table that kind of sums up everything that we've talked about. So the first one, that classroom site fund supplemental, this is not really in the performance pay plan, but I added that because it's part of the classroom site funds, and we'll talk about that in a minute, that budget. Pay for performance evaluation, that was based on the evaluation paid out in June 2026. This is the one that's proposed to increase from $600 up to $1,500. Pay for performance assessment, that's another $1,500. That was the same as current year, paid in December of 2026. Clock hours or endorsements, again, max together. You can earn that maximum amount of $1,100. Endorsements would be paid in. And November 20, the payday based on looking at the calendar, it would be December 1st. So you would actually get it in November because of early direct deposit, but so November, December of 2026. Clock hour payment would be April 2027. National board cert, you can get the $3,000 there. Again, two payments of $1,500 each in December and May. And then that instructional improvement amount, $400 in April of 2027. So that total amount from Classroom Site Fund that teachers could be eligible to make is $17,520. They won't all do that because not all, for example, have a national board cert. Not all will have the clock hours or endorsements, things like that. But that's the max amount that I could make from the Classroom Site Fund. So let's talk about this budget for a second. And this will lead almost into the next action item as well. We'll put this back on the screen for the next action item. But when we look at the blue, fiscal year 2026, that's our current year budget. Okay, so currently in Classroom Site Fund, for this year, the revenue is about a little shy of $12.5 million. Now keep in mind, on this slide, I don't have carryover funds on because when we're operating budgets, I don't want to dig into the carryover funds because that's our savings account, if you will. And so when we look at a balanced budget, we don't want to be digging into the savings account. So I don't have that on the slide, but keep in mind that is the one where we have about $22 million in carryover funds for. So we do have a pretty good, pretty healthy balance in there. As I said before, the AEL, the aggregate expenditure limit, is waived for 2027, but it still needs to be fixed. And so we don't know what 2028 looks like and things like that. So that is nice to have a healthy balance there to utilize that in case something like the AEL does not get overridden and we have to cut our budget halfway through. But so again, the budget for this year, about a little bit shy of 12.5 million. Current expenditures up to the time of this presentation, expenditures and encumbrances, meaning kind of money either paid out or set aside to be paid out, is about 8.4 million. The remaining amount for clock hours, that is going to be paid out next month. So that's about 363,000. Remaining amount for that instructional improvement, about 317,000 paid out in April. And then the remaining amount for performance pay evaluation paid in June is about 475,000 if the amount stays at the 600. The proposed increase amount is $900 to bring that total to $1,500. That would cost about $713,000. So total, that would give us a surplus this year of a little over $2.2 million. Okay, if that proposal for that increase of the $1,500 from $600 to $1,500 passed, again, we would still have a surplus this year of about $2.2 million. So now looking at fiscal year 2027, the budget allocation, we received this year a $50 increase to our Classroom Site Fund budget per pupil. The nice thing about Classroom Site Fund that's not true about M&O is, remember, M&O is current year budget. So we don't know what that budget, we're predicting based on student count that's coming in August. Classroom Site Fund, however, is based off of prior year weighted student count. So that budget, I don't know how much yet. They haven't released, the JLBC have not released that amount yet, but we believe it's going to be anywhere from 2 to 3% is kind of what we're estimating. So I'm estimating about a $20 increase to the Classroom Site Fund budget. If that's true, and we have a $20 increase to the Classroom Site Fund budget based on our current weighted ADM for this year, because that's what's going to be used to calculate the budget for next year for Classroom Site Fund, it would give us about a little over $12 million budget for Classroom Site Fund. Again, this is not including carryover. This is just the revenue. Based on the expenditures from the FY 2026 column right there, that's about $10.2 million of that $12 million. The next four pieces are the proposed raises, and we'll talk a little bit more about the step raises, the increase to RSP, and the step raises and the increase to teachers a little bit more on the salary schedule side at the next action item, but you can see the numbers there. So step raises for teachers about 614,000, increases for RSPs about 189,000, step raises for RSPs and psychs about 60,000, and then a proposed increase to teacher salaries about $1,300 would be about $1 million cost. So when we take a look at those numbers, gives us a deficit of about $16,000. But in a $12 million budget, remember the amount that's total teacher could get is about 17,000. That would be like a vacancy savings if we didn't fill a classroom for a teacher or two. So that, even though yes, it's a deficit, it's not anything that I'd be worried about overcoming. So that's the idea of the budget. And so that's where the numbers came from in terms of the increase when we look at, and we'll just stick with the performance pay for now, looking at the increase from the $600 to the $1,500, that was where the calculations came in for that, the performance pay piece. Finally, just to wrap up, there is an appeals process if somebody feels like they should have earned part of that performance pay or clock hours or endorsements or things like that. There's an appeals process that we can gather the committee together to determine if they should receive that compensation or not. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Cantu.
Madam President, Mr. Watson, members of the board, executive team, Mr. Etheridge, thank you for your presentation. I just have a simple question. Let's say not all our teachers are national certified, minus $3,000. An average teacher with 10 years experience, what is the average amount of money that they're making, including the $13,000 that you mentioned
Madam
about?
President, Vice President Cantu. So,
I don't know if you have that answer for me, but it's just like
yeah, we can take a look, definitely. So if I'm 10 years of experience with a master's degree, my base salary is $63,700. That part of the base salary is a position amount based on either M&O, Title I, whatever the case may be, or let me go back to that slide right there. So again, so 63,700, 10,000 of that would be classroom site fund dollars. So $52,000 is M&O or Title I or whatever fund I'm paid out of. 10,000 of that is paid from the classroom site fund dollars.
and that's the max.
Madam President, Vice President Cantu, thank you. So that would be my base salary. Then on top of that, I could earn an additional, what would that be? $7,500 if I received performance pay for assessments based on test scores, if I was effective or highly effective on my evaluation, if I received the full $1,100, whether that be through certificates and endorsements or clock hours, if I'm nationally board certified, and then I receive that instructional improvement money. So that $63,700 turns into $71,200.
Thank you. I like to see numbers. I like to put together the amounts and the percentages and all that, so I can have a better idea. And if our teachers are doing well, why not give them the pay for performance? And I'm glad that you have an appeal system, so if they don't feel they've been recognized properly, they can still have a appeal for that money. Correct?
Madam President, Vice President Cantu, yes, absolutely, and that was what we were looking at here. Is that when we were kind of coming up with this proposal, the idea is, in a school, if we're a for-profit institution, profit is our priority. We want to reduce expenses and increase revenue because that's what we're trying to do. We're in a school district, that's not necessarily our goal. Of course, we need to make sure that we have savings. We need to make sure we have fund balances. But ultimately, the money that we're receiving from taxpayers should go back towards the students to serve the students at that current year. It's not really to bank up a bunch of money to do that. So that's where the number kind of came up, is looking at, hey, we're going to have another surplus here. We have a healthy fund balance already. We don't want to continue adding to that surplus when we have an opportunity to provide our hardworking teachers some additional funding for that.
And thank you for your explanation. And I also understand that the money that goes into the classroom should be reflected on the students and the student achievement, of course. And we've been here trying to do things that reflects that, because allow me to include Madam President here, but that's the goal. That's the board goal, that the students are receiving the proper education and prepare them for their future. I think that it's a great plan. This is, and one more question. This is aside from insurance, correct?
Madam President, Vice President Cantu, yes, that is another action item on the. So maybe it's the Derek show tonight. I don't know.
So
Up here quite a bit. That's all right.
Cartwright District covers health insurance for teachers, which amounts to how much a year?
Madam President, Vice President Cantu, it's going to be about $9,200 or so per year for employee only.
So $71,000 average salary plus insurance.
Madam President, Vice President Cantu, that's correct. And the other piece too, on top of that, is When we look at like total compensation for employees, benefits is one of them. But keep in mind, like state retirement, for example, a lot of people don't realize because it comes from their paycheck that they think, that's my expense. But the district also matches that 12%. So you really, each paycheck, when you see that 12% being taken from your paycheck to put in your state retirement, the district also pays 12% on top of that to put into your retirement. Correct. So that's true. Similar to like Social Security, for example, the 6.2% that's taken from your paycheck, the district also matches that for Social Security and Medicare and those types of things. So when we look at total compensation, it's easy to look at the salary, but I appreciate you kind of adding in the benefits as well, because that's something that's added to the total compensation of teachers. Absolutely.
One more question, last question. Cartwright District is at what level compared with benefits and salaries compared to the neighboring districts?
Yeah, Madam President, Vice President Cantu, the Cartwright School District is comparable. Keep in mind, so the Auditor General just released their classroom spending report, and our teacher salary did decrease slightly, and they're still slightly higher than the average, but it decreased slightly. But keep in mind, part of that is because we moved the payment of Classroom Site Fund from June to this fiscal year. So we knew we were going to go down about $1,500 average because we moved that payment to the new fiscal year. So I expect that average to go back up this year.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Etheridge. And with it, if there are there any other questions? Ms. Garcia?
Oh, thank you. I don't know. I just, I guess either way, the employees still get taxed. I'm just trying to see in the long run how they benefit. But okay, thank you for the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving forward, I move that we approve the 26-27 Pay for Performance Award Plan, which is based on that data from the 25-26 school year. Ms. Cantu, do I have a second?
I second, Madam President.
Thank you. And proceeding to a roll call vote, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you. Ms. Hernandez, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you. Ms. Garcia, how do you vote?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And I vote aye, and motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to the next presentation. We've got the presentation and approval of certified psychologists and related service provider salary schedules for the 26-27 school year. Dr. Etheridge.
Madam President, governing board members, Superintendent Watson, executive team, all those in the audience. Zai, you can actually just leave it on this. This is perfect. So just kind of going back to this, we have 3 salary schedules currently on the agenda for approval. The first one is the certified salary schedule. And so the certified salary schedule, that would include a step raise for teachers, which is what we provide annually. It's $800. And it would also add $1,300 to each cell of that salary schedule. So ultimately, because the Pay for Performance plan was just approved, that's an increase of $900. If this salary schedule gets approved, that would be an increase of $2,100 between the $800 step raise and the $1,300 added to the salary schedule, for a total of a $3,000 raise for our teachers. Okay, so again, for the salary schedule, it's adding $1,300 to each cell, and then teachers would go down a step just based on years of service. When it comes to the related service provider salary schedule, this includes a $5,000 increase to each cell. One of the things to keep in mind about related service providers is that unlike teachers, now teachers have an opportunity to teach at a public school, at a private school, at a charter school, but related service providers with their certification, they're actually able to go to like private entities. So my daughter, for example, she had a speech delay. We took her to Team for Kids, and a speech language pathologist worked with her at Teen for Kids. So they have the ability to go out and work at private organizations, not only school districts, but also private organizations. So when we look at kind of like competition and retention of these staff members, it's a little bit more challenging to become competitive because they can go again to different places. So that's why that increase is the $5,000 increase. That brings us a little bit more aligned to what neighboring school districts and some of those other institutions are paying as well. They would also receive a step increase of the $1,125 on their salary schedule. So RSPs would be looking at a $6,125 increase. Finally, the psychologist salary schedule. We currently are pretty competitive with the psychologist, the school psychologist salary schedule. So we're not proposing any increase to any of those cells for this year, but we would include a step increase for them to move down on the salary schedule. And again, where did these numbers come from? How did we determine, again, the $1,300 increase to each of those cells, the $5,000 increase to that RSPs, and that's these numbers that we had shown before. So throughout that, that's how we're funding these increases for those salary schedules. I'm happy to answer any questions there.
Okay. Board members, are there any questions? Ms. Garcia, any questions?
No.
Okay. So I move that we approve the certified psychologist and related service provider salary schedules for the 26-27 school year. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. And do we, proceeding to a roll call vote. Ms. Cantu, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you. And Ms. Hernandez, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you. And Ms. Garcia, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. And I vote aye, and motion carries. Okay, going on to the next item. We've got the approval of the medical benefits with Arizona School Board Association.
Madam President, if I may, just thank you, governing board. I just want to say thank you. This represents an investment in our teachers. We understand how important our teachers are to the work we do here. They, as important as I think our principals are, our office staff, the acting superintendent, we know that the most important relationship in education after the parent with the child is that relationship between the teacher and the child. And so I think this represents an investment in our teachers and a way to say thank you for the hard work that you're doing. And so I appreciate the votes tonight.
Thank you. And with that, we're moving on to the medical benefits with Arizona School Board Association Insurance. Dr.
Yeah, Madam President, Vice President Cantu, Superintendent Watson, executive team, and those in the audience. Medical insurance. So this has been, I will admit, a loss of sleep for some nights because of the cost of medical insurance increasing. And I was very concerned about what this was going to do to our budget, what this impact was going to have on our teachers, and what this was going to look like. So I am actually happy to present what we have for you tonight. So as a reminder, as we talked about last board meeting, we are currently self-funded through Valley Schools Management Group. They're kind of the administrator of our plan, but we are a self-funded model, meaning we pay the claims that when a teacher goes to the doctor, we pay that claim based on the pool of money that we have. We wanted to take a look this year. We've been with Valley Schools for about 5 years, I believe. And it was time to just go back out to the market and see what options were out there to see if we still were currently getting the best insurance for the best price. And so we began a request for proposal, an RFP, in November of 2025. And again, just to review market conditions, review pricing in the marketplace, just again, make sure that our employees were getting the best bang for their buck. We did take a look at self-funded versus fully funded options. And again, just as a reminder, self-funded options, if your claims are low, the self-funded option is the way to go, because any amount of say, let's say the premiums are $10 million. If our claims only come back at $8 million, That $2 million is our money. We save that. We put that in a pool of funding for the following year. So if your claim data is low and looking good compared to your premiums, self-funded models are the way to go. Fully funded options, however, would be the opposite. If your claim data is not looking good and you are exceeding your premium amount, so let's say, again, your premium amounts are $10 million, but our claim data is $13 million, that's costing $3 million that we are responsible for because we're self-funded. Under a fully funded option, the insurance provider that we pick, or the administrator there under the fully funded option, like for example, this case, ASBATE, they pick up that $3 million extra cost. We pay $10 million, and that's the max that we pay. They pick up that additional cost. So it's a way to kind of just make sure that you cap your expense. So again, if you're self-funded would be beneficial to those districts where claim data is looking good compared to their premiums. Fully funded options are good for those districts where your claim data is getting out of control above your premium options. So we looked at both options there, both self-funded and fully funded options. And ultimately, as we were reviewing some of the different vendors and insurance companies that responded to the RFP, we felt that it was in the best interest of the district to cancel that solicitation and just take a look at two procurement exempt insurance companies because they're trusts, Valley Schools under a self-funded option and ASBATE under a fully funded option. So that's where we got to those two. And then we started negotiating, as I said last time, with ASBATE and Valley Schools separately. So again, here's our current reality. So as we take a look, the big thing to look at, there's a lot of data on this, on this chart, but I want you to take a look at kind of the red. That really probably that's what we're looking at anyways. The red draws our eyes to that. But the red is the surplus or the deficit compared to the premiums that we paid. So when we take a look, for example, in July of 25, that first one, the claims that we paid out and our administrative fee and those types of things, the expenses that we had exceeded the amount that we expected by about $483,000. And you can see that trend continues every single month. And I have data up here through January, but I just received February's, and the trend continues again. You can see that we are exceeding our costs every month that we've had so far. And when you look at the column to the right of that total cost loss ratio, you see that 132%. What that means, what that percentage is if it was 100%, your calculated premiums would match your expenses. So 100% would mean we calculated that perfectly. We spent the same amount that we thought. If we're under that, let's say it's 90%, that means our plan is running well. We say that. We're paying out less claims than what we thought we were going to. If it's higher than that, which we see in this case, 132%, that means that we are paying out a lot more than what we expected. In fact, 32 percentage points more than what we expected. So when you take a look at thinking about calculating that increase of premiums, because again, we're self-funded. We have to fund that somehow, so that would be an increase of premiums. There's a lot of different, actuaries do these calculations and things like that. But in general, I think an easy way to say that would be we'd have to increase those premiums by 32%. So when you take a look at what that cost is for our district, currently we calculated about $11.5 million in premiums. Whereas if next year we continued under a self-funded model, we would have to look at contributing about $15.5 million, an increase of $4 million that we would have to find either from our budget, pass that cost on to the employee, whatever the case may be, we would have to find that $4 million. Now, again, to be fair, if then our claim data only came in at $13 million, that $2 million would be still our money. But if you look at the ASBATE total amount, they're basically giving us the premiums at $11 million. So think about our claim data, where under a self-funded option, we're projected based on it. Again, we're only in March, so we still have a couple months to go, but we're not, the trend has continued for those months. I don't see that differing. Expected claims at the year end is about $15.5 million. So ASBATE is really kind of capping that cost for us at $11 million. That's actually a savings of what we paid this year for our medical insurance. So that's great. one of the concerns that we had in the RFP and the insurance committee was that's fantastic, looks great on paper, but two things. One, what does the insurance look like? Because if it's way worse insurance, that's not going to be helpful. Or two, is ASBATE, knowing that we're switching insurance providers, basically buying saying, hey, here's the rate, here's really good, switch to us. And then next year they're going to say, oh, now we're going to increase your premiums by 50%, and we have to figure that out. Well, what's excellent, and I will say that through the consulting firm that we worked with, they said we've actually never seen this happen before, is ASBATE has assured us that they will not increase our premiums more than 5% per year through 2030. So that gives us 4 years of an increase of no more than 5%. Right now, medical inflation just alone is about 10%. So you can expect, even if your plans were running well, to increase about 10% each year. So the fact that they're capping that premium at 5% is almost crazy. You know, like it's really great and really helps with our budget when it takes a look at that. So we take a look at this chart here, kind of shows that in orange. Currently, again, we offer a PPO plan, which is kind of just the typical, you know, I have coverage there versus a high deductible plan where the deductible is a little bit higher, but I can have a health savings account on the side of that to help with some of those medical expenses. You can see our premium costs there. PPO about $806, high deductible about $731. If I have insurance for employee plus one, currently we're paying close to $1,800, and this is per month for the PPO plan. And the high deductible plan about $1,600. And then if I have the family plan, it's about $2,200 per month for the PPO, and high deductible is about $2,000. Just to kind of give you a little bit of a background of how it works for employee paid, is that we currently cover the employee paid portion of that. So for example, we would cover that $806.95 for the PPO plan for the employee only. If I have a family plan, though, we cover that $806.95 of that $2,200, and then the employee is responsible for the difference of that amount. So we cover the employee, for anybody eligible for benefits, we cover the employee only for everybody. It's just if I have a family plan, it just deducts that amount from what I pay for my premiums. So you can see in Valley Schools, and again, when it comes to Valley Schools, since we're self-insured, these numbers are created by us. We determine what the premiums are, but in order to fund that $15.5 million, here's what the premiums would have to be. So you're looking at about $1,000 and $1,086 for the PPO plan, employee only, about $2,400, and close to $3,000 a month for a PPO for the family plan. If that was the route that we went. And you can see the increase on the side. That's an increase of about $760 per month for employees. And then you can see the high deductible plan similar. Whereas in ASBATE, under the PPO plan, that employee only cost is $774, which is actually a decrease of the premiums that we see right now, all the way up to the PPO for the family plan of $2,100, a savings of about $89 per month for the family plan. So we can see that the cost, not only for employer, because we pay the employee only plan, so that's going to decrease for us, but for any of those individuals who have an employee plus one or an employee plus family, that cost is going to decrease for them as well. One other thing I forgot to mention is that we do have some situations, we call it dual spouse, basically. So there's a teacher at Borman and a teacher at Tomahawk. They're married. We basically contribute 2 employee plans to that dual spouse plan for that family amount. So that's how that is calculated there. But so you can see the ASBATE, looks wonderful. Again, then the concern comes in is, that's great. From a financial standpoint, this looks good. But what about from an insurance standpoint? Am I going to be paying a copays of 3 times as much as what I was paying before? Well, the good news is no. The good news is that when we take a look at this next chart here, in the first 2 columns, that's our current Valley Schools plan. So for example, if we look at the deductible for individuals, it's currently at $800. If we look at the deductible for families, it's about $1,600. And the co-insurance, so after I pick that deductible, insurance will pick up 80% of the plan, where I pick up 20% of those out-of-pocket costs. Out-of-pocket maximums. Currently, the individual is $5,500, family is $11,000. And by the way, I'm just talking about the PPO plan. There is similar data for the high deductible plan, but and then we take a look at kind of what our copays are. Again, hospital services, kind of those things for the current. Well, when you look to the right under the first two, the option one for ASBATE, and this is all ASBATE. The first two columns is the PPO. The second two columns is a high deductible plan. Anything in green is a better insurance than what we currently have, or a better, more employee friendly than what the current insurance we have. So for example, the new deductible under the ASBATE plan would be $500, where the old deductible was $800. So I pay less of a deductible prior to meeting co-insurance. The family goes from $1,600 down to $1,000. The co-insurance, again, after I pay my deductible, I have a major hospital stay and I pay my deductible, and now in the old plan, I was paying 20% of those costs. Insurance was picking up 80% of those costs. Under this plan, I only pick up 15% of those costs, and the insurance picks up 85% of those costs. There are a couple reds on there. It is not going to be beneficial for everyone. There are, if I see a specialist, for example, my copay does move from $30 to $58. That is, that's would hurt somebody that sees a specialist every month. That's going to cost a little bit more for them. Prescriptions, for example, are going to cost a little bit more. But again, when we take a look at cost, we have to kind of think about, we only have so much money. So where do we pick up that cost? Do we pick up the cost in the premium and increase the premiums for our employees? Or do we have a plan where the premiums are slightly less and some of the pieces may be a little bit more expensive when I go to the doctor? But ultimately, taking a look at this plan overall as a whole, I really think this is actually a really great move for us in terms of, from a financial standpoint. I will not lie, like I did lose sleep thinking $4 million hit to our budget. Where are we finding that money? To now where I'm saying we actually have a little bit of a cost savings moving forward, which is a crazy swing when we take a look at that. But then also I think it's just a more robust insurance plan for our employees as well. So happy to answer any questions that you guys may have at this time. My apologies. One more thing to say. This is the medical plan, and we started with the medical plan because this was the most challenging and the hardest. We will, at the next governing board meeting, bring back dental, vision, life insurance, those types of other ancillary products that we have. We just wanted to start with medical plans that I think is weighing the most on employees right now, and with teachers and thinking about contracts and stuff like that. We wanted to make sure we had the medical plan in place. I will say we're still currently looking at different options for dental and vision and things like that, but we're trying to keep that as similar as possible to what we previously had, just for continuity purposes for our employees. But we'll bring those plans at the next board meeting.
All right. Thank you. Do we have any questions?
I do have a question.
Okay, Ms. Garcia?
Yes. I'm wondering, will we need to hire consultants to support the ASBATE?
Madam President, Board Member Garcia, that's a great question. So what's funny is that ASBATE does provide, through their company, just like Valley Schools, really any insurance company provides consultants to help implement some of those things. In addition, though, the consultants that also helped us with the RFP is going to continue to help us with implementation of these plans, and ASBATE is actually picking up that cost as well.
All righty. Thank you.
So I remember, I have another question. So weren't we with ASBATE when we failed to file mandatory IRS forms back in 2017?
Madam President, Board Member Garcia.
Oh.
Sorry, Madam President, Board Member Garcia.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yes, we were with ASBATE at that time.
Yeah, the reason why I'm bringing that up is because I remember, like, the Valley Schools they monitor and assist with IRS filings so we don't miss deadlines. ASBATE didn't support us with the IRS filings, with the deadlines before. How will ASBATE support us to make sure we don't make the same mistake?
Yeah, Madam President, Vice President Garcia, that's a great question. One of our supporter or consultants out from ASBATES that would help us is actually a former Cartwright employee to help with some of those things. But also, back when the failure to file happened, that was actually right at the time when the new laws kind of came into play. And so I think there was just some confusion and learnings that needed to happen. I feel we're in a lot better spot now moving forward.
I think what's important to note is how are we going to ensure that it does not happen again?
Madam President, Board Member Garcia, I agree with you 100%.
And I believe that you did mention that the consultants are going to continue to work with you, and the person's actually a former employee. Right. All righty. Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Madam
I'm
President,
sorry, Ms. Cantu.
I do have a question, Mr. Etheridge. So all this is in it's the best deal Cartwright can come when it comes to make a deal on health insurance for the entire. How many employees do we have?
Madam President, Vice President Cantu, so we have about 1,650 employees total. About 1,100 of them qualify for medical insurance.
Who doesn't qualify for insurance?
Those employees who work less than 30 hours per week.
Okay. Mostly the classified, the ESP.
Madam President, Vice President Cantu, that would be fair. Most of the part-time classified monitors, crosswalks.
Okay. One more question. Let's say an employee wants to add a family to this plan. Is there a possibility? It'll be to their own cost, correct?
Madam President, Vice President Cantu, yes. So if I, for example, I have the family plan. So if the district will pick up the amount of the employee-only premium, so in this case, if adopted, $774 per month, the district would pay. I would then pay the difference between the 2103 minus the 774, so whatever that $1,400 per month difference. It's not cheap, and that has been a concern for a long time. It's not cheap when it comes to family and employee only. But again, I look at compared to other plans, there wouldn't be really a different insurance company, for example. That was the purpose of the RFP, to get as many people to respond and give us quotes and costs and things like that to make sure that we were ultimately getting the best deal.
Thank you, Mr. Etheridge. It's very good to know all the apps benefits there are personnel is able to receive through this district. And you say you still have other benefits pending, correct?
Madam President, Vice President Cantu, yes. So dental, vision, voluntary life insurance, short-term disability. I think there's like legal shield. Like there's several other benefits that we'll bring next board meeting for approval.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the presentation. It's very informative, and thank you again, Mr. Etheridge, Dr. Etheridge. Thank you, Madam President.
And just moving forward, so we need to approve this. So I move that we approve the medical benefits with Arizona School Board Association Insurance Trust, ASPATE, for the fiscal year 2026-2027.
I second, Madam President.
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. I will proceed to a roll call vote. How do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you. Ms. Hernandez, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you. Ms. Garcia, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Okay. Thank you. And I vote aye. And motion carries. Were you going to say something? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And we're going into the presentation and consideration for approval to purchase Chromebooks. Dr. Etheridge.
Thank you, Madam President, Governing Board members, Superintendent Watson, executive team, all those in the audience. So this is our kind of Chromebook refresh initiative. So as you know, prior to COVID, we were starting to build up some technology. We knew moving into 21st century skills, ensuring that our students had those options was important. And so we started kind of moving into, more of a one-to-one model. But COVID really accelerated that. And COVID really forced us to ensure that all of our students had one-to-one Chromebooks. Back then, during COVID, we had a lot of ESSER funds, we had federal funds, even the county supported our initiatives and purchased Chromebooks and things like that. So back in the 2020, 2021 era, we received Chromebooks to be able to distribute to our students one-to-one. Chromebooks are a very basic learning tool. There's definitely better computing systems out there and things like that. They're more costly, but Chromebooks don't have a very long useful life. Generally about 3 years is typically what we think about for a Chromebook. Well, remember, we purchased those Chromebooks in 2020, 2021. We are now in 2026. So our Chromebooks are really starting to get to the end of useful life at this time. So we took a look at, okay, so if we need to refresh, we need to, make sure that we, again, we only have limited amount of funding. So we have to determine a way moving forward, how do we kind of create a refreshment plan for the Chromebooks? And so again, just thinking about what we tried to identify is making sure that our students had kind of just next generation, kind of the good Chromebooks that we can provide for them, but being cost effective, making sure that any sort of curriculum resources that we have for them, they're able to access on these Chromebooks. High stakes testing, so AASA testing, mimic testing, that is all done electronically now. So making sure they have a computing device to take those assessments. And then again, just making sure that our students have the ability to engage in 21st century skills and leverage that technology in the classroom. These are just some examples of some of the curriculums that we currently have that utilize a online component or a cloud component or using the Chromebook. So Lexia, Benchmark Advanced, My Perspective, those types of things all have some components that teachers can utilize on these Chromebooks. Again, as I already said, part of the issue here is that we have most of our Chromebooks purchased in 2020, 2021, and a 3 to 5 year life cycle. Again, 5 years would be the long piece of that. Generally, it's 3 years. And so right now, about 12.5% of the fleet has been submitted for repair. And so what that does is that increase costs because we have a repair cost, but also it takes away the technology needs for the students. They don't have that device in front of them to utilize. And so as we take a look at some of these, battery replacements is something as well that it increases that cost because the batteries only last for so long. So we need to purchase batteries for these new Chromebooks. So it's starting to nickel and dime us, if you will. So what we did earlier in the fall is we got a committee together to take a look at Chromebooks. And we had 8 vendors that we contacted, 5 of them just through, what they had to offer were invited to present to this committee. And we took a look at cost. We took a look at serviceability, durability. I remember through one of the presentations, we took the Chromebook and we put a pencil in there and we slammed the top as hard as we could and nothing broke. And this is the type of durability that we want when you're dealing with a 3rd grader or a 5th grader or an 8th grader. So making sure that the devices that we were purchasing were durable, but making sure they had the capacity that we needed for the storage and some of those things. So the items that we looked at, we did look at something that gave us a little bit more storage space, and we were originally set to go from there, but just timing, unfortunately, tariffs started getting in the way. and those costs started to increase pretty quickly. And so we kind of just stuck with what we currently have as our model for 4 gigabyte RAMs, 32 gigabyte storage. The nice part about this refresh as well is that we have coverage, warranty coverage that goes along with that. And so it covers 3 years of damage coverage, and it also allows for 1 free battery replacement per Chromebook. So that really helps when we take a look at some of the costs to ensure that moving forward, we don't have some of these rising repair costs and things like that. The idea for implementation for this would be take a look at, we're currently here for governing board review and approval. Once we receive that, issuing the PO and going through kind of the procurement and ordering phase of that. One of the things currently, because of tariffs, yes, but another piece is just some of the parts and the components of those Chromebooks are being harder to come by, and so that's increasing the costs. And so even between the time we received the quote through this governing board meeting, they said, we'll give you to the 20th until we rise the costs again. Like, that's how fast costs are rising with Chromebooks based on trade and everything that's going on right now. So the idea would be to order kind of immediately. So then June, July, we start receiving those products, making sure that we, stage them, deploy them, those types of things, so that they're ready for the start of school in August. Now, what we would have loved to do would be to refresh our entire fleet K-8 and pay kind of payments over a couple of years. So kind of finance these Chromebooks just to make sure we had newer Chromebooks for all of our students. Unfortunately, the financing gets a little bit more complicated. And so the easier route for us to take is to just do a schedule of replacement. And now we have a life cycle replacement schedule every couple of years. So what we're saying for this year would be that we would order about 4,000 Chromebooks, 4,200 Chromebooks, and we would deploy them to 1st, 4th, and 7th grade. The other grades would use the previous fleet. Next year, we would come back to the governing board for approval again for a phase 2 piece to order kind of the same amount of Chromebooks to again deploy them in 1st, 4th, and 7th, because the Chromebooks that we purchased for this year, for next year, roll up to 2nd, 5th, and 8th grade. And then the following year, we would finish that life cycle to then have every student has a Chromebook purchased within the last 3 years. The plan would probably be to take that 4th year. Again, Chromebooks 3 to 5 years. The 4th year, I think we could be okay with. And then maybe that 5th year come back and have a discussion on how do we restart that life cycle again, so that we're continuing now to be budget conscious in the idea of we can't really afford or want to spend $5 million in one budget year, but if we can replenish 1.5 million, 1.5 million, 1.5 million, that helps us with some of those budget needs as well. And so that's really the idea, is that this current approval would be about $1.5 million to purchase about 4,200 units to again deploy in that 1st, 4th, 7th. Next year, come back again to ask for kind of that 2nd phase, and then the following year, come back again for that 3rd phase. And with that, I'm happy to, one of the things I do want to mention is, I don't know yet about phase 2 or phase 3, but for phase 1, we do have currently enough money in the Title I budget to purchase the Chromebook. So we wouldn't have to touch capital this year for Chromebooks. And you and I, and Vice President Kent too, you and I both, like, capital is sacred. So it would be nice to be able to avoid that cost for this year. Again, next year we may have to look at capital, but at least for this year, we could purchase that out of Title I.
Okay. All righty. Any questions regarding Chromebooks? Ms. Garcia?
No.
Okay. No questions. With that, I move to approve the purchase of Chromebooks from CDWG for $1,508,850. Did I do the math right? Bringing the total not to exceed amount for CDWG to $1,758,000. No.
Madam
Larger
President,
than
and
that?
I know you have a motion on the floor, and I apologize, but real quick, just to clarify that, we currently have a not to exceed of $250,000 for parts, repairs, those types of things. So that's why this Chromebook refreshes the 1.5, but we just wanted to make that clear to the governing board that we already have that 250 authorized, so we can continue repairs and things like that.
Okay. With that stated, do I have a second?
I second, Madam President.
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. And do roll call vote. How do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you. Ms. Hernandez, how do you vote?
I vote aye. I vote aye.
Thank you. And Ms. Garcia, how do you vote?
I did second that, and I do vote aye.
I'm sorry. Ms. Cantu had seconded just slightly before, but thank you. Thank you for your support. And I vote aye, and motion carries. And going reports, Mr. Watson.
Yeah, Madam President, Governing Board. I want to give a shout out to Brett Tarver Leadership Academy, who recently received a $15,000 grant from the Arizona Diamondbacks for STEAM projects and giving kids opportunities to explore and create. And so, being an Arizona native, over spring break as a kid, sitting on the lawn at a spring training game, it's great to see our baseball community contributing to Brett Tarver and the work that they're doing. And so we appreciate them supporting us and our kids at Tarver. And also recently we had some students from Spitalny deliver the weather on ABC 15. And so what a terrific opportunity for our students to be able to, our kids need to see a variety of careers in their lives, right? I am the son of a teacher, and I became a teacher, and we have kids who need to see a variety of careers and experiences. And so to be able to see the work that they do at ABC 15, to see what it takes to not just deliver the weather, but to sit down and predict and look at the science of meteorology, and to have that experience is really terrific. And so thanks to our Spitalny team and to ABC 15 for helping to facilitate that. It was great to be at the Tarver Day Parade right before the break. The kids dressed as bees this year as part of the theme, and a variety of bees representing worker bees, queen bees, guard bees. It was a terrific theme, and those middle school kids were sharp in the band. They sounded terrific. And then also, before I get to the kind of the last thing, we have testing coming up. We're kind of in testing season actually right now. And so I just want to thank all of our educators who are helping our students to prepare for testing. Not here in Cartwright, but a few years ago, I was in a school district, and I popped in during testing week, and there was probably a couple thousand mints, those red and white mints that you get after dinner, and I said, why do you have all these mints? And they said it was testing week, and there was a study that was done once that shows if you have a mint in your mouth that you could get an extra percent or two, and that's how seriously school districts take our testing. And so I just want to give another shout out to our principals, to our teachers who have spent the entire year, the entire career of these kids, preparing them for this assessment. And I also do want to say that this assessment is 1 point in a child's life, and it doesn't represent necessarily all the work and all the success that those kids are experiencing. For example, art isn't expressly put on AASA. PE, band. And these are some really important experiences that our kids need to have have well-rounded kids. And so I just do want to have a realistic expectation of what this assessment does. And it doesn't test the whole child. And I just want to make that clear. But it is just a good barometer for us as we have a metric to compare who we are and what we're doing with other school districts around the state. So I just want to say good luck to our students, good luck to our teachers and staff and our principals during this testing season. And then lastly, we'll do a little bit more of a presentation at an upcoming meeting, but I just want to give a shout out to our Teacher of the Year, Shannon Bishop, representing John F. Long Elementary School, and our ESP of the Year, representing our ESP of the year representing Peralta, Nick Cepeda, and then our Principal of the year representing Holiday Park, Deb Kinsley. And so just all three of these individuals just really exemplify what it is to be a Cartwright employee. And we're looking forward to them being at the Brewers, celebrating them at the Brewers game. Once again, going back to just this baseball relationship, we appreciate the Brewers being part of our community. And we will everybody on the governing board is invited to attend, as are these employees of the year. And we'll have a celebration and an opportunity for a first pitch throwout, which is an honor. And so, is it coming back? Is throwing the ball coming back? Okay, good. All right. So and so that will happen this Friday at the Brewer Stadium. We're invited to be there about between 12:30 and 1 o'clock. And the game will start at 2:10. And so I know Victor has some tickets for anybody who can attend. And if you need a couple of extra tickets, let us know. And so once again, congratulations to these three representatives, and a big thanks to the Brewers for just supporting what we're trying to do here in Cartwright and do good work for our kids and provide some springtime baseball to our community.
Alrighty, thank you. Thank you for that. Looking forward to everything that's taking place. We've got on the agenda next the report's summary of current events. Do I have any requests for future agenda items?
Madam President,
Ms. Cantu?
Mr. Watson, I think we had mentioned a retreat for the executive team at some point. I don't know how far to now, but there's some very well needed. So if it's, I'm sorry.
Okay. No, thank you.
Say it or not.
Thank you for that. It's recommendation for a retreat. We're talking about a board retreat with our executive team. As we engage in our conversations with their regarding putting together the strategic plan and identifying those goals. So continuing to move forward. So we're going to work on that. We can work on a timeline to get that going. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Cantu. Anything else? No. Okay. And with that, we've got an executive session. We've got, let me make sure. We've got an item. The employee has requested a public discussion of this item in a public meeting. So pursuant to ARS 38-431-03, A3 and A1, to consider and discuss the continued employment of the district's deputy super chief financial officer. And I've got Mr. Nick Busan of Cantel Meehan Brown, who will share the information to the board.
Madam President, Vice President Cantu, members of the board in the cloud, Mr. Watson, and everybody in the Cartwright community, thank you for having me today. My name is Nick Busan. I'm an attorney who handled this matter. There has been some discussion about due process. Ultimately, when a employee of a school district is when the school district seeks to terminate an employee's contract, they have to follow due process. There are statutory elements of due process and also policy elements that the governing board has adopted policy and has to be followed. So in this matter, back in October of 2025, the board adopted a statement of charges. At that time, they were just allegations against Ms. Farrar. Ms. Farrar had an opportunity to request a hearing. She did. The hearing occurred on three separate dates, December 9th and 10th of 2025, and then again on February 22nd 7th of 2026. Both times she was represented by an attorney. She had an opportunity to question all of the witnesses and then also provide her own witnesses and evidence. This all occurred before a impartial hearing officer who was chosen off of a list that was created by the Arizona Department of Education or approved by the Arizona Department of Education. That hearing officer had 10 days after that hearing to make a recommendation to the governing board. The governing board is not required to follow that recommendation, but the governing board may if it chooses to. And Mr. Murkow, he made his determination on March 9th of this year. The statute states then that the governing board then has 10 days to hear the recommendation. That's what we're here for tonight. You do not have to decide on it tonight, although you may by statute. 15541 is a statute that states clearly what the employee's right is at this hearing, and that right is to present either oral argument or written argument. The governing board has been presented with the hearing officer's determination. It's 26 pages long, has all the facts of the hearing in it, all of the legal arguments. It actually has some statements about due process in there. In that recommendation, Mr. Murkow does indeed recommend to the governing board to terminate Mrs. Farrar's employment contract and affirm the ultimate allegations that were presented in October. Mrs. Farrar, I do not believe she's here today. If she was here today, she would be able to present oral argument to the board. She did present written argument shortly before this hearing, and I asked Ms. Santos to print out that for the board, so you all have a copy of that. I've also provided that to the board member in the cloud by email and by text message, so the board has the opportunity to review the employee's arguments and also the hearing officer's recommendation. And ultimately, I'm here to answer any questions, but it's your determination whether you want to vote today and affirm that recommendation or not. That would be my suggestion.
I have a question.
I'm sorry, Ms. Garcia, hold on. You'll go second. Ms. Cantu has a question, and we'll go to your question.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Busan, because I'm not an attorney, we rely on your expertise. My question is, since this situation started, since attorneys started to look into this Mrs. Ferrar's situation, had we follow the proper procedure of due process during the investigation?
Yes, and the hearing officer acknowledged that in his determination. I have been involved since September of 2025, prior to the statement of charges that the board adopted. Prior to that, Mrs. Farrar had been placed on administrative leave while under investigation, and that's perfectly within the district's rights of due process. And also, I will just tell you a line from the hearing officer's recommendation to that point. Mr. Murkow stated that Mrs. Farrar was denied due process since no progressive discipline was imposed by the district before placing her on administrative leave, an action she considered to be disciplinary. Farrar is wrong. Administrative leave is not disciplinary and has been sanctioned as a tool to be used by school districts. The hearing officer stated, Arizona law allows the inherent right of a school district to suspend a teacher with pay pending an investigation. And he goes on and cites the case law about that. So the answer is yes, due process was followed.
Thank you, Mr. Busan. And the reason, just for clarification purposes, because we've been hearing or comments that we are not following the proper procedure within the rights of the employee. And I just wanted to make sure. Thank you for your answer. Thank you, Madam President.
I do have one, but I will allow Ms. Garcia.
Yes, thank you.
You-
So, speaking to Ms. Farrar's situation, how or who initiated the investigation? Not how, but who initiated the investigation?
The investigation was initiated by the acting superintendent after communications with Mrs. Farrar that
Okay.
suggested to him that she should be placed on leave.
So my concern is that he initiated the investigation and he had only been there 17 days. 17 days. And so I just read the letter that everyone has before them. And so it really does not seem justified, considering there was no coaching, there was no reprimand. I just read the same letter you all have. So it doesn't make any sense to me how a person, Mr. Watson, newly hired, zero experience as a superintendent, is chosen out of thin air. There was nothing to indicate he was going to be hired. There was no posting, nothing, zero. And then 17 days after he's in that seat, he requests an investigation and puts her on leave. That is what I'm trying to say. And if we are able to give Ms. Farrar an opportunity to at least listen to her, hear her, because so far everything that I've heard, it makes no sense. Not only does, and please let me finish this, not only does the board listen to the employees and to the families, but they don't even listen to Ms. Farrar, who has been fiscally responsible, has kept us afloat, has kept us financially, fiscally safe and sound. And yet, 17 days after Mr. Watson starts, he initiates an investigation. That is that's an insult to the employee. That's an insult to the justice system, to the system that we are utilizing right now. And I want to make that really clear. I would also, because this is a public setting and Ms. Farrar has requested it be that, the public also deserves to hear what she has written, because they don't know what's in that letter. Only we do. So with all due respect, I am requesting that publicly. Thank you. Oh, and one other thing. So in that letter, I did not read anything about her having an option to resign versus tainting her reputation and ruining her livelihood. So not only did she get placed on admin leave 17 days after Mr. Watson started his job, but now, I mean, this is a total conquer and destroy. It is the most harsh and cruel situation for her to be in. And I want that publicly noted as well. So again, with all due respect, I'm asking for a second time that letter be read to the public.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. In fact, I was just inquiring with Mr. Watson, because of these continued allegations of wrongdoing and no lack of due process, and actually a request to read Ms. Farrar's letter in response to the process that has taken quite some time, as you explained in your opening. My question, Attorney Busan, is because of these continued allegations, there's a lot of information in this. It is extensive. I'm not asking that we read this, but could we have a brief overview or regarding the findings? Because in the absence of that, the continued opinion of Ms., you know, in this case, Ms. Denise Garcia, or any member of the audience or anyone watching, it's only fair, since Mrs. Farrar did agree or did request that this hearing be open and available to the public. Um, could we provide some information so regarding the findings or whatever that we're able to share, because it just leaves it open for folks to make up, their own
Yes,
findings, hearings.
absolutely, Madam President. And I'll try to be brief. I'll try to summarize. The public would be, I would encourage the public to go back to October 27th and watch that meeting where we laid out the entire statement of charges. That has all the allegations in there. But ultimately, and I'm just going to walk through the hearing officer's decision a little bit, just so we're all on the same page here. The hearing officer's decision, like I said, was over a 3-day mini trial is essentially what it is. It's an opportunity to hear from witnesses, question them. That's what it's really kind of the essence of due process, getting to challenge your accuser, ask probing questions to determine whether what they're saying has any credibility at all. And Mrs. Farrar and her attorney had an opportunity to do that before this recommendation was provided. So ultimately, what it goes back to and what it starts with was before Mr. Watson was acting superintendent, was a tax payment that this district had to deal with going all the way back to 2017, in which in July of 2024, ultimately, it was recommended that the district needed to pay about $2.3 million to the IRS for some missed filings and other fees. At the time, Ms. Farrar was the CFO, and she was on an executive team who understood that this payment needed to be made. Mr. Etheridge was suggesting that. Mrs. Farrar, the evidence showed that she suggested to Mr. Etheridge to go ahead and make the payment. She was his direct supervisor, so she directed him to do so. He ended up making that payment in August of 2024. Then, in an act of, let's just say it was less than transparent for the governing board in 25 school year to have the IRS payment approved through a voucher. And what the hearing officer found was that in that September 2024 approval, that the board received 100 pages of vouchers, and buried somewhere around page 50, don't quote me on that, but it was right in the middle, was a payment for $2.3 million. That payment, and that this is all publicly accessible on board docs, was for about $2.3 million, I believe, and it was for indirect costs. It came out of a fund. It was very unclear what that payment was actually for. Now, when the hearing officer heard all that, he concluded that it was very difficult for the public to determine what that payment was for. Now, fast forward to February of 2025, when Mr. Watson came in, and the executive team at that point discussed wanting to have the board reapprove that payment, because it was a discussion amongst the executive team that the governing board did not really know that they had approved that payment already. And at that time, the allegation, which Mr. Murkow believes is credible, was that Mrs. Farrar told Mr. Watson in a meeting of her peers that she did not know that payment was made. Now, that the hearing officer found to be an uncredible statement, being that she was the acting CFO. She was on the executive team at the time in July of 2024. She directed, and there was testimony that she directed Mr. Etheridge to make that payment. So Mr. Murkow found that it was simply not credible for her to make that statement to Mr. Watson. Later, the testimony was, and Mr. Murkow found this in his recommendation, that Mr. Watson had a meeting with Mrs. Farrar. Mrs. Farrar told him that she actually did make the payment. So she came clean to him in a meeting. She disputes that, and that's part of her written statement, and that was part of something she argued at the hearing. But Mr. Murkow found that Mr. Watson's testimony on that issue was more credible, and he also found that it was more credible of Mr. Watson to place her on administrative leave at that point because of the seriousness of somebody at the head leadership position of the district needs to be able to trust his direct subordinates. They are working together on very important matters to this district, high levels of financial spending that goes on in this district, and that communication, that relationship with his CFO needs to be something that he can rely on. And so Mr. Murkow acknowledged that here in his determination. So that was initially the first reason that Mrs. Farrar was placed on leave. There was another issue that went into that, which was that right around the same time period, Mrs. Farrar wrote up a notice to impose discipline on Mr. Etheridge for bringing up this entire issue about having the board reapprove that money anyway. So when she wrote up that notice to impose discipline on Mr. Etheridge, she had a meeting with him. She ultimately decided not to impose it, but in that notice to impose discipline, she stated that that Mr. Etheridge could have come forward in September, October, November, and December, and ultimately she accused him of being unprofessional. Mr. Murkow disagreed. He thought that there were reasons for Mr. Etheridge, as he testified, to wait to bring that information up, and that Mrs. Farrar's notice to impose discipline on him was actually an unprofessional act itself. Now, that wasn't one of the ultimate charges. It was just kind of something that was giving flavor to ultimately what was occurring in February of 2025. Now, while Mrs. Farrar was on leave and the investigation ensued, there was initial statement of charges brought in early October. Right around that same time period, information came forward that Mrs. Farrar was providing computer access and email access and access to the district's data network to the interim superintendent who was placed on leave and under investigation. That's a very serious allegation because that person that's placed on leave is given an administrative leave letter explaining that they should not have any access to the district's computer system while on leave. Now, it's a non-disciplinary leave, but it's still something that you do not provide access to. You don't want them interfering with an investigation, finding access to things that they currently don't have a right to access. So the information that came forward was that Ms. Farrar was permitting that other employee access to the computer network, and she was keeping it confidential from her supervisor, Mr. Watson. She had some other communications with other employees and indeed with district council at the time about it, but ultimately the hearing officer found that it was untruthful and unprofessional for her to enable that computer access to that employee on leave and not tell her boss about it. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to in layman's terms. She was found to be untruthful, somebody that Mr. Watson could not trust, and was acting behind his back, essentially, to accomplish the things that she wanted to accomplish. That's kind of the gist of what Mr. Murkow has found, and I'm happy to answer any more specific questions.
So with all of that being said, Mr. Watson was able to figure all of that out within the 17 days that he was there. First 17 days that he was there. And then also what Mr. Merkel did not do, or who knows, maybe he saw the presentation, but so we've all been a part of all of this and present during the hearings, the presentations. And so we were also there when Mr. Etheridge, he took responsibility. He owned the fact that he knew about the IRS penalties that were generated way back in 2017 with the previous administration, that just basically left us out to dry. And that moved forward. The penalties moved forward with additional penalties. And so at that presentation, and I'm going to repeat it for, I don't know, many, many times, I've done it already, Mr. Etheridge did admit that he took responsibility, that he did not provide the oversight to his employees. And I remember that clearly because I actually believed him. And after that meeting, I told him I appreciated that he owned it. It's important. When we do something wrong, yes, we should own it. And so, but it all fell back down onto Ms. Farrar because she's the CFO. And so, yes, she did admit whatever she admitted, and she did take care of it, or he took care of it because he said that he had submitted the vouchers. So all of this is I mean, it's still very confusing. And so again, after 17 days of a brand new employee being in that seat, making that decision. So that I find to be highly unethical and unjust, but that's my opinion. So now that you've read the charges, would you please read the letter that she submitted to us? So
Ms.
now that
Garcia,
the
we're
public
not
knows
done.
what the charges are, now they,
Ms. Garcia,
okay, I understand that. Yes,
we're not done yet. And I do want to
I
clarify.
know that we're not
I
done
do
yet.
want to clarify that what you just stated is clearly, repeatedly, your opinion. As the rest of our
It's
board
not my
members
opinion,
have an
Lydia. We were
opinion,
there.
would you
We
allow
were
me to
there for
finish?
that
I heard
presentation.
you out and I allowed you to speak. I'm simply responding and clarifying for the record. You are entitled to your opinion, regardless whether it differs with the hearing officer or, whatever's happened. We do have other board members here. We are entitled to our opinion as well. And I do want to state that for the record, we have a document here that if we need to go through and read and share publicly with everything that's been collected, I would be in favor of doing, because I do not want to, I'm honestly, it's disheartening and troubling that we continue to get allegations of wrongdoing, lack of due process, lack of opportunities for hearing. I mean, it's been an extensive process that I'm going to tell you that as long as I've been here, as a board member at the Cartwright School District, has not been afforded to previous administrators. Okay, for the record. And we do have a letter here, but I've read this letter. It's really asking for a reconsideration, and that it's not truthful. I mean, that's what it sums up to, what it's summing up to. And I am going to differ based on the information that was made by an independent hearing officer with recommendations. So, are there any other questions regarding the hearing, regarding this presentation with the background information?
Just one more question, Madam President.
Ms. Cantu?
So during the, first of all, what is it the the limit of money spending from superintendent or CFO? Maybe Mr. Etheridge can answer that. What is the limit of money that are allowed to be spent without board approval?
Madam President, Vice President Cantu, the technical answer to that is nothing. The board has to approve all spending, but generally it's approved through a voucher system, many times after the fact in order to allow for operations. But for a separate governing board approval item, $100,000.
$100,000.
Correct.
And in this situation was 2.3 million, correct?
Madam President, Vice President, correct. Yes.
And one more question. Within that investigation, something else came out regarding the access to the superintendent that was
Administrative
in an
leave.
administrative leave. So there's more situations came that involve Ms. Ferrar, correct, Mr.
Correct.
Busan?
Yes.
So this is an ongoing investigation. It didn't start yesterday, right?
No, it started about 13 months ago. And actually, there was a statement made multiple times about how Mr. Watson was only here for 17 days. That's not accurate. It was 28 days, calendar days, when Mrs. Farrar was actually placed on leave. But what you'll find in the hearing officer's recommendation was that it really doesn't matter how long it is. If you're untruthful to your supervisor, then they're in a position where they either permit it to happen and find shame on them the next time, or they take action. Mr. Watson took action, and at that point, conduct an investigation. That's what needs to be stressed here, is that there was a full investigation before the statement of charges was presented in October. Nearly 10 months of being on administrative leave during that investigation, where it's, innocent until proven responsible. And still, the board has the determination to make whether it wants to affirm the recommendation or not. So,
And just for clarification purposes, Ms. Ferrar has been under investigation, placed on leave. Has she been receiving payment for that time that she's not being actually being an employee here?
yeah, the statutes actually require this process in order to impose discipline past 10 days without pay. And so that's what this process has enabled is she did not have to challenge and request a hearing. So back in October, when the board adopted the charges, it was Ms. Farrar's right to request a hearing, which then extended the administrative leave and for other various reasons was extended all the way until now.
So this, thank you, Mr. Busan. Thank you, Mr. Edrich. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. With that, I'd like for us to go back to our regular governing board session because we technically are addressing the executive session item 1 that was requested to be made public. So with that, I would like to go into the item K1, which is a resumption of the regular meeting. So consideration and possible action to approve and adopt the hearing officer's findings of fact, conclusions of law, and recommended decisions to terminate its employment contract with Deputy Superintendent Chief Financial Officer Victoria Farrar and dismiss her from employment in the Cartwright School District effective March 18, 2026. With that, that's the motion. So I move to consider, and I'm going to have to reread it. So I move that we consider and have possible action to approve and adopt the hearing officer's finding of fact conclusions. So I'm moving that we approve and adopt the hearing officer's findings of fact, conclusions of law, and recommended decision to terminate its employment contract with Deputy Superintendent Chief Financial Officer Victoria Farrar and dismiss her from employment in the Cartwright School District effective March 18, 2026. Do I have a second?
Second, Madam President.
Thank you, and I will proceed to a roll call vote. Ms. Cantu, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you. And Ms. Hernandez, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you. And Ms. Garcia, how do you vote?
Nay.
Nay. And I vote aye. And motion carries. Now we've got to resume going into back into our executive session. I'm going to make a motion that we move back into executive session. Ms. Cantu, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Cantu, and I will proceed with a roll call vote. Ms. Cantu, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you, Ms. Hernandez. How do you vote?
I vote aye.
Ms. Garcia, how do you vote?
Nay.
Thank you, and I vote aye, and motion carries. We're going to executive session, and this is regarding the board may vote to convene an executive session pursuant to ARS 38-43103. 8.2 regarding appeal of long-term suspension recommendation by hearing officer for student number 7088585. Thank you. So for the record, please let the record reflect it is 8:41. we're resuming the governing board meeting, the regular governing board meeting, back to order, and the time is 9:21. And I'd like to, first item, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the hearing officer's recommendation for long-term suspension for student 7088585. Ms. Cantu, do I have a second?
I second, Madam President.
Thank you. And I'll proceed to a roll call vote. How do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you. And Ms. Hernandez, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you. And I vote aye. And motion carries. I just want to announce that the next regular governing board meeting will be held on April 8th at 2026 at 6 p.m. at the Cartwright School District boardroom. That's why I hesitated. A special meeting study session followed by executive session will be held on Wednesday, March 25th, next week, 2026 at 6 p.m. at the Cartwright School District Governing Boardroom. Ms. Cantu, or anybody, do I have a second?
I second, Madam President.
Thank you. I'll proceed to a roll call vote. Ms. Cantu, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you. Ms. Hernandez, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you. And I vote aye, and we are adjourned. 9:22.